So how are you? Hi, my name is Lyle Sopel, and you're here with me in my studio, and I'm going to talk about Jade and Gemstone art today. Along with that, I'm going to mention something about the priorities in the studio, things that I like to do first and things that I find are really necessary to do first, and then a variety of ideas on how to do good design and what that means to your art and how that affects the sales of your art in the long term. So let's start over here because I'm working on a piece that's got a lot of elements of design in it, and it's really very complicated. So at this point, I've been showing you various parts and pieces of a puffin project that I've been working on, and I wanted to show you how this comes together. So this bird is going to have an attached wing. So here it is. I'm going to just put it together like that with the pins, and you can see that this is going to be what it's going to be like when it's glued in. And so at some point after it's glued in, I will go over it, sand it, and grind it to fit. So I just want to show you how that comes together. Like what I did to start here is I, first of all, drilled 2 holes in the bottom of the wing with this diamond bit right here. And then I've carved it to fit, but I need 2 holes to secure it on the other side. So in order to get the 2 holes, I put a piece of plasticine down on the surface and then do an impression of where those holes are. So like that, and then you just barely get an impression, but as you can see here, you can see that there's a mark where that hole has to go. So I just use this drill and a little bit of water. Very little. And so we set up those holes, just like that. So I grind a hole. This has to be very precise in order for that wing to fit nicely and naturally on the other side. So I clear away the plasticine. I put the pins in. These are stainless steel pins, by the way, so they won't be seen, but they will make the permanent fit so that it holds the thing together. So there you go. That's how the wing will go on. I have one for the other side, and I'd like to show you that over here. So follow me around the studio and I'll show you the parts that I've been working on here. I just really love making puffins. They're just one of my most enjoyable pieces to make because of, I think, the character of the birds. And as you can see here, this is the bird, this is how the wings are going to fit on. And I have the head piece, which is just stuck on there with a piece of plasticine, so it has a little stick. But basically, this is marble, this is jade, and this is like a sandstone that has those lovely colorations that puffins have. So I've carved the fit for the head. You can see how he's going to sit like this. So let's look at the composition now. This piece is called Clevelandite, and it's got a lot of mineral composition in there. It's very, very interesting, and it reminds me a lot of how where puffins would actually live, and they live on the shoreline. They're an aquatic kind of bird, but they come into to the shoreline to have their babies and to build a nest and that sort of thing. So I wanted to use the hole, this natural hole in the Clevelandite as a place to build a nest for a baby. So I've yet to produce the baby and have him in there. So the idea is to have the 2 of them together in a way that brings their attention to the nest below. And you can see that there's quite a bit of the composition. So this is what I really wanted to talk about, is composition of this piece and how it is so important to the interest of the piece and how it helps with the storytelling. And I know I've been talking about storytelling for quite a few weeks now, but I feel like it's really like the essence of what this is. And if you're not telling a story with the art, then you're probably losing the interest of your collectors. So story is really, really important. Over here on this side, I've got another piece I'd like to talk to you about, because we've shown this in the past also, and it's coming along as well, the eagles. And I'm going to show you how that one's going to come together. But first of all, I want to talk a little bit about composition and about how a piece should be organized in a way that makes it very interesting, has a storyline, and also has an interest point that collectors will engage with. And so when I start a piece, I always think of it in a form of like a triangle, like in this case for the puffins. I like a triangular shape, so the base mounting is here. And so what that does is I can put the subject matter up in the top. And so what that does is it draws your eye up into the form like this. And it keeps you engaged, and there's a little hole here where the baby's going to be in, and then the mother's and the father is going to be on top. So here's a asymmetrical form where the 2 or 3 subjects here. So because it's asymmetrical, it allows your eye to move in a rhythmic pattern around the composition. And I do like to have like this V-shaped center part, so that the weight of the sculpture is placed in a way that it gives it optical lift. So it doesn't sit heavy, like opposed to a form like a pyramid where all the weight of the visual weight I'm talking about is anchored to the tabletop. So it works in reverse, and it uplifts your eye. And so it's always interesting. Every time you look at it, you have this sense of action or movement in the piece. So that's something that I really work with all the time. This is a really key element, is keeping the eye moving around the form of the composition. So another thing that I use really regularly, and I always think in this way, is I use a slow S-curve. Like a slow S-curve is a natural form that you find in everything. Everything that's alive has this line. So whenever I'm doing a composition, or I can show you that in the eagle piece in a little bit, is that when you have this line in your composition in some way, it's going to denote life, it's going to denote action, movement, and all of those kinds of things that are important to the sculpture. So all of this applies also to painting or any other visual composition. So it's really, really important to know about these things. Like in a painting, you know, what you want to do is, you know, there's the golden ratio, which is basically, it keeps your eye at some point like flowing around the canvas. So whatever scene you might be designing into the canvas, your eye is never stuck in the corner or stuck in some other place. It's always in a movement around there. So in sculpture, that's the same kind of thing. You want to have like some kind of a movement that works around the composition. So with all of these pieces that are happening in the studio, I choose a priority to how I work on them, because priority is the number one thing. Like when you're working with a variety of things that need to be produced and you need to create money from these things, you have to choose what you're going to do first. And my choice is always money first. And I know that sounds a little cold and not very artistic to consider money as the priority, but money first is the way that it works best for me in my studio. So anything that has to do with a commission, gallery shows, gallery orders, or any kind of communication that involves money into the future is what I do first. And, you know, at some point, I made a decision to create my art on a more professional basis where people could count on me, and when they put in an order or they asked for a commission, that I would take a really professional mindset approach to how I did things. And so at some point I was, you know, on my own in the studio, and I just kind of did what I wanted to do, and I kind of, if I had a few pieces around, then I'd try to sell them, and it didn't really work out that well. So at some point I decided that yes, I wanted to be professional. I wanted to have more work in the marketplace. I wanted to have more people seeing what I did. So I thought to myself, yeah, you know, I have a choice in my life. I can either stay in this quiet, more comfortable little studio and do as I wish and not make very much money, or I can look at this other way and try to be more professional and more forward with my work. So I thought I can always go back to that other space if I wanted to, but I chose this way. So this way meant to have more of a professional approach. And so the professional approach involves money. You got to have the money in order to make things work. And so I always say that money first, and then you can play later. So as long as the commissions are complete and the gallery work is finished, then I have the money in the bank to do experiments and play around. So that's how I kind of prioritize my things. So with that in mind, you really have to, first of all, if you want to be a successful artist, you got to understand your audience. Who is it that you're creating for? You got to develop a professional mindset, and you got to learn to tell effective stories with your art. That's really so important. Like these puffins, I've got this beautiful little story coming along with the parents and the baby and all that. And by the way, that little storyline came from an experience I had on my deck of the studio here that's been going on for a couple of weeks. There was a mother robin that set a nest up on the balcony of our studio, just around the corner here. And so every day we go upstairs and we can see the little nest and the babies, and they developed, and it's been a couple of weeks now. And this morning they actually flew out of the nest. They're gone, completely gone. So that just intrigued me to the point where, yeah, I could do these birds in the nest and that kind of thing. It's just kind of like, I allow the things that are around me in my life to influence what I do. And I can tell that story, and it's interesting. It doesn't matter how simple you might think it is. It's an idea, and it's a story that makes what I'm doing here intriguing. So I would suggest that if you're looking for storyline in your work and you're looking for a way to share about who you are as an artist, you don't have to, you know, invent some fantastic thing. Who you are is all that people want to know about. Who you are today, right now. So whatever affects you in your life right now, if you're you know, a mother that has children and you talk about their children and how your children affect the art, you know, if you're a guy that likes to ride a motorcycle, well, how does that motorcycle affect your art? You know, when you go out, you feel the wind, you feel the excitement, you know, you bring that into your art, and you talk about that kind of thing, and that brings story and interest to what you do. That's how you develop clients, and that's how you develop ways of communicating to them. So along with the design elements here, I want to talk about these eagles that have been coming along, and now I've got the feather pattern set up on here. Last week, I want to thank Helen for her suggestion, because she's the one that suggested create an amethyst fish for the eagle piece, because I asked for some audience participation. So that's what I've done. You know, I like the suggestions about the snake, and I like the suggestions about the light colored amethyst, but I thought about the snake. I thought it'd be really interesting to have this snake wound around the foot of the eagle here, but the piece I think is too small, and by the time I got the snake image or figure into it, it would be kind of a string, and it wouldn't be really recognizable as a snake. And the light-colored amethyst, by the time I got it carved to what I wanted it to be, it becomes too thin in light and color. So I chose the darker amethyst. And what I'm going to do here is just tuck it into the foot like this. I've got it carved to fit something like that. So I'll put a tiny little pin in there, and then I'm going to glue it in. So let's see if you can see it well from this angle or that angle. But that's, and then the bird's going to be upright in this position. So he's going to be looking at the bird in front, coming after it. So this one here, which has now the feather pattern, it's not sanded, it's just carved in place. So this one is next for that pattern. So this one here will be connected here. So as I've talked about before, the fish is the subject for their interest in their activity. So if you look at this composition, the two birds together, you can see the slow S-curve in the shape of the birds. This is very intentional, this aspect of the design. So this brings in the movement, and it also brings in the idea of nature, anything in nature. So wherever I can put this idea of the slow S-curve, so the two birds together as a composition generate that S-curve. So here we have the design that I'm talking about, and we have the elements, and then the storyline is the idea of the fish being their subject matter. So, you know, I've had a lot of experience with eagles, and I've actually seen this kind of action between them, and I've seen them actually in the river going after fish. So, believe it or not, eagles can swim. Like, you might not even have thought about that, but eagles do swim. So, they can sit on the surface of the water with their wings spread, and they can forage for whatever dead fish or whatever is the bottom of the river. I've actually seen that. And then if they can't reach it, they fold their wings in, go underwater, and come back up with the fish. So anyway, that's all part of the story. It's part of the line. So here's the bottom. This is the base for this composition. Again, lots of movement. I had a black base on that I was going to use last week. Decided, no, it has to be green. This green is the same green as the green of the bird, so it's going to be beautiful jade green base, and this crystal, it's alligator quartz crystal base, is going to sit on top of it, upright like so. So there we have the movement. So what I'm doing is I've got the S-curve of the birds, and I've mimicked that S-curve here in the water shape of the base. So we got the S-curve happening all the way through this whole composition, and we have the storyline where the fish has come from the base. So I'm actually making more than one fish. I'm going to add the fish to the bottom part of the base, and that's one of the reasons that I liked it. Like the green bottom rather than the black, because it adds a nice contrast to that. So, coming along, these pieces are for an upcoming show I'm doing in Seattle at the end of this month. So I'm always under a little bit of pressure to have them done, but that's what I like. I like to be able to set up guidelines and a way of working with the pieces, and then set up my schedule to produce them. So what I've been saying today is prioritize, money first. You get the money, then you can play. And as you can see, these ideas of design all work together. It's not the whole story about success, but it's a really big part of it. So good design is key, but it also has to accompany good story. So you've got to have the two elements: good story, good design, and then you can have success with your art. It'll attract people's attention, and you'll get known for your action in the subject matter and so on. So I just wanted to close with a quote, because Nelson Mandela is a really great mentor. I love him so much. I have a quote here from him that says, "There is no passion in playing small, in settling for a life that is less than one that you are capable of living." So let me read that again. There is no passion in playing small, in settling for a life that is less than one that you are capable of living. So I love that quote, because what it means is that, as I was saying in my story, I made a decision at some point in my artistic career to move forward and have a goal that's bigger than where I was at. And I took the steps, one step at a time, to get there. So I wanted more. I want to be successful. I want to be internationally renowned. I want to be having fun with my art every day. So that's where I went. And I like to share that with you. So that's my goal as well, is to share these ideas with you. So thanks for being with me today, and I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow, or next week. Bye now.